Hello everybody, this is Steve Grizzetti, co-founder of MoviePix.com and author of the MoviePix.com Guide to Adobe Premiere Elements, and here we are in Premiere Elements. I've created a small slideshow here on my timeline. I know there are a number of ways to create slideshows in Premiere Elements. Some are automatic, some are semi-automatic. I prefer the manual way. I like to have a little more control in my work. Now I've placed these photos here on the timeline. You may notice if you look at any of the photos that they kind of extend beyond the video frame. That little blue line you're seeing outside there is the photo larger than the video frame. And the reason it happens is before I brought my photo into this project, I went to my preferences and I unchecked default scale to frame size. If that is checked when you bring in your photos are all going to be artificially resized to fit inside your video frame. I like to have a little bit of extra room there, a little more resolution. Another thing I did is before I even brought the photos in, I opened them in Photoshop Elements, and if I right click and select properties, you can see that I sized them all to approximately 2500 by 1875. This one's 1975. I've got them all at that 2500 pixel width. So they're all approximately the same size. The reason why I'm going to show you a shortcut here, and this shortcut only works if all of the photos are approximately the same size. So I always resize all my photos to about 2500 pixels wide and however tall they happen to come out. Now, I want to create pans and zooms over each one of these photos, but creating them one at a time can be a little bit of a challenge. I want to show you a little shortcut I like to use. I'm going to just start on this first photo, select it, go over to Applied Effects, and then open up the keyframe controller. And with the playhead at the very beginning, I'm going to create a simple pan and zoom. I want to start with a close-up here of that donut, and that will be my initial keyframe. I'll turn on my animation to create those initial keyframes. And then I'll go to the end of the clip and I'll go to a wide shot. And that's going to be about 77%. So I'm going to bring the scale down to 77%. Make sure none of my edges are showing. There we go. And now I've got a simple pan and zoom right between those 2 points. Once I've created one pan and zoom, I can apply it to all of my photos. So I'm going to select that one slide that I just created the pan and zoom for. Right click on it and select copy, then just lasso all the rest of them here on the timeline. Right click and select paste effects and adjustments. That's going to paste the pan and zoom I created on every one of the slides. Now, the reason I like to work manually is so that I can make some sense of my pan and zooms. I don't want to have them just in there so things are moving around. I want them to tell part of the story. But now I can go to each one of those photos. This one, for instance, open up the keyframe controller in Applied Effects and just simply jump to each of the keyframe points. And I can do that just by pressing on one of the little arrows, jump to a keyframe point, and now I can manually change that keyframe point to whatever I'd like. So maybe start with the woman here and then widen out to the whole picture, jump to the last keyframe point, and we'll reposition that. And of course, not every picture should be a zoom out. So let's go to this picture here and I'll go to the first keyframe point and we'll make that my zoom out here, make that the 77%. There we go. And then my second keyframe can be my zoom in to 100%. And so on. So I've given myself like a little template to work with, and then I just need to customize the keyframes for each of the stories I want to tell with each picture. Another thing I like to do in my slideshows is add a transition, and I'm going to simply add a transition by selecting the entire timeline, right-clicking, going to the timeline submenu and selecting Apply Default Transition. Now you can make any transition a default transition, but by default, it's the cross dissolve, my favorite transition. But the problem is when you add a transition to a photo, you're also adding about a second more to the duration. In other words, we need to add, to create those little handles on each side for the transition, about half a second on either side. That means if I select this photo, go over to Applied Effects, you notice my keyframe points are no longer at the ends of the photo. So I'm just going to select them all by lassoing them, dragging those to the beginning, those to the end. That way, when I go through my transition, I'm not going to hit a freeze frame. My pan and zooms will continue all the way through the transition. Just good housekeeping. And you get a nice pan and zoom to tell your story, and a smooth transition from picture to picture. Anyway, that's the way I like to work, and it's a nice tip for you. If you want to know more tips and tricks, you'll want to check out all that we have, the tips and tutorials we have at moviepix.com. If you want to know everything about the program and why the things happened the way they did, you want to check out the moviepix.com guide. It's available at amazon.com. I'm Steve Grizzetti. Hope to see you again soon.